The crystal chandeliers of Bistro cast dancing shadows across our family's annual dinner gathering. I adjusted my simple black dress, feeling distinctly out of place among the designer labels that adorned my more successful relatives. At 35, I was the family's designated disappointment, or so they thought. Anna, there you are. My brother Marcus's voice carried across the room with practiced authority. He was impeccably dressed in a Tom Ford suit, his recent acquisition of another downtown property evident in his bearing. I fought the urge to check my phone, where an urgent email about tomorrow's board meeting sat unanswered. We were just discussing everyone's achievements this year, he continued, putting his arm around his wife Victoria. I kept my voice neutral, remembering the stack of ownership papers sitting in my office that bore Marcus's increasingly desperate signature requests. Congratulations on the new building, I said mildly, thinking of the Thompson Tower, his latest acquisition, that he wouldn't own for much longer. Thank you, darling, he smirked, his cologne expensive and overwhelming. Though I'm surprised you heard about it, given how disconnected you are from the real estate world. My mother joined us, champagne flute in hand. And what about you, Anna? Still doing that little consulting thing? The way she said consulting made it sound like I was selling magazine subscriptions door to door. If only they knew that Phoenix Consulting Group, the firm they dismissed so easily, was actually the parent company that had been systematically acquiring Marcus's properties through various shell corporations. Yes, mother. Still consulting. I sipped my water, thinking of tomorrow morning's meeting where Marcus's fate would be decided. 15 years, Marcus mused, shaking his head with exaggerated concern. 15 years since you left that promising position at Anderson & Co. to find your own path. And what do you have to show for it? A small consulting practice that nobody's ever heard of. I thought about my private island in the Maldives, my 3 homes in different countries, and the fact that I was Marcus's boss's boss's boss. Not that he knew it. Phoenix Consulting Group operated entirely through subsidiaries and shell companies, with my name carefully hidden from public records. We do all right, I said mildly. How's the Thompson Tower acquisition going, Marcus? I asked, knowing exactly how it was going. His perfectly maintained smile flickered for just a moment. Brilliantly, he lied smoothly. Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. I bit back a laugh, remembering the meeting last week where his company had desperately pitched their rescue plan to Phoenix Consulting Group's board, unaware that the mysterious CEO they were trying to impress was sitting right in front of them. Really? I raised an eyebrow. No? Complications? His jaw tightened slightly. Nothing I can't handle. Though I wouldn't expect you to understand the complexities of a billion-dollar real estate empire. My father joined our little circle, his presence adding another layer of judgment to the conversation. Marcus is doing extraordinary things, Anna. Perhaps he could help you find a real position in his company. Something more substantial than consulting. I watched Marcus preen under our father's praise, completely oblivious to the fact that his empire was built on loans that were about to be called in. Tomorrow he would learn that the mysterious Phoenix Consulting Group owned not just the Thompson Tower, but nearly 60% of his supposed property portfolio. That's so kind of you to offer, Marcus, I said, my voice dripping with hidden amusement. But I'm comfortable where I am. Oh, honey, my mother interjected, her voice heavy with false sympathy, you shouldn't settle for comfortable. Look at Marcus. He's about to close the biggest deal in the city's history. The Thompson Tower will make his career. If they only knew that the Thompson Tower was actually my carefully orchestrated plan to teach my arrogant brother a much-needed lesson in humility. Speaking of the deal, Marcus said, checking his Patek Philippe watch, I have an early meeting tomorrow with the consulting team. They're just advisors, of course, but we have to humor them. He gave me a patronizing smile. You should come by the office sometime, Anna. See what a real business looks like. I thought about the meeting he was referring to, the one where I would be sitting at the head of the table, not as Anna Harrison, the family disappointment, but as a Phoenix, the reclusive founder of Phoenix Consulting Group. Actually, I said, finishing my water, I have an early meeting tomorrow too. A signing ceremony for a rather important contract. Marcus smirked. Finally landed a big client for your little consultation business? Something like that, I smiled, thinking of the stunned expressions I'd see tomorrow. You could say tomorrow will change everything. As I left the restaurant, I heard Marcus's carrying whisper, "Poor Anna, still a nobody after all these years. What a waste of potential." In my car, I finally checked the email that had been buzzing in my pocket. It was from my VP of Operations. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Harrison Corp's board is desperate to close this deal. They don't realize we're the ones holding all the cards." I smiled, starting my car. Tomorrow Marcus would learn what it truly meant to be a nobody. The next morning, Phoenix Consulting Group's headquarters occupied the top 5 floors of downtown's most prestigious office tower. I stood in my private elevator, ascending to the penthouse conference room, watching the city wake up through the glass walls. My Armani suit, one I'd never wear to family functions, felt like armor. "Good morning, Miss Phoenix," my assistant Sarah greeted me as I stepped out. After 10 years, she was one of the few who knew both sides of my life. "The Harrison Corp team is waiting in the main conference room. Your brother Marcus is apparently quite vocal about the delay." I checked my reflection in the brushed steel walls. Gone was the intentionally understated Anna from last night's dinner. Today I was a Phoenix CEO of one of the world's most powerful consulting and acquisition firms. "How long have they been waiting?" I asked, already knowing the answer. 20 minutes, Sarah's smile held a touch of mischief. "Mr. Harrison has mentioned his important position approximately 12 times. Well then," I straightened my jacket, "let's not keep them waiting any longer." The main conference room was a testament to power, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city. Marcus stood at one end of the massive table, mid-rant about the disrespect of being kept waiting. Several board members, including my father, Harrison Corp's CEO, occupied the other seats. "Finally," Marcus exclaimed as the door opened. "Do you have any idea who I—" His voice trailed off as I walked in, his expression shifting from outrage to confusion to disbelief. "Anna." I walked calmly to the head of the table, setting my briefcase down with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. "Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the delay. Shall we begin discussing the Harrison Corp Phoenix merger?" Uncle Robert, who sat on Harrison Corp's board, found his voice first. "Anna, this is highly inappropriate. Where's the Phoenix? We're here to meet with the CEO." "You are." I sat down, nodding to Sarah, who began distributing folders. "A Phoenix. Anna Harrison Phoenix, founder and CEO of Phoenix Consulting Group, and as of this morning, the majority shareholder of your company's debt." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus had gone pale, his designer suit suddenly seeming like a child's costume. Father was frantically flipping through the documents Sarah had distributed, his legal training kicking in as he searched for any loophole. This is impossible," Marcus stammered. "You're just a small-time consultant. You work out of a tiny office downtown." "That office?" I smiled. "It's one of our meeting spaces for local clients. Phoenix Consulting Group operates in 47 countries, Marcus. We own this building. And as of today, we own a controlling interest in Harrison Corporation." I stood up, clicking through presentation slides that detailed exactly how I'd built my empire while my family was busy underestimating me. 10 years ago, when I left Anderson & Co., everyone thought I was throwing my career away. What you didn't know was that I'd already secured contracts with 3 major international clients. Uncle Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. "The Thompson Tower. It's your company?" "Through a series of shell corporations, yes. Just like the venture capital firm that's been buying up Harrison Corp's debt for the past 3 years." I met his eyes across the table. "The same debt you're hoping this merger will help you resolve." "But," Marcus sank into his chair, "the consulting fees, they're non-negotiable." I pulled out the final contract. "Phoenix Consulting Group will assume control of Harrison Corp operations, restructure the management team, and implement a new corporate strategy." "You can't do this," Marcus interjected, his legal partner bravado cracking. "The board won't approve." "The board already has." I nodded to Sarah, who displayed the voting results. "They did so last night after reviewing the complete terms. Terms that make it clear Harrison Corp will face immediate loan recalls without this merger." Father stood up slowly, his authority visibly crumbling. "Why, Anna? Why go to all this trouble?" "Because 10 years ago, you all taught me a valuable lesson." I walked around the table slowly. You taught me that perception matters more than reality, that titles and appearances count more than actual ability. I stopped beside Marcus's chair. Last night, brother, what did you call me? A nobody after all these years. Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. The memory of his words at dinner hung heavy in the air. Here's today's reality, I continued. Harrison Corp is now a subsidiary of Phoenix Consulting Group. Marcus, your position as executive vice president is being eliminated. And you, father, will be announcing your retirement effective immediately. The next hour was a blur of signatures, legal requirements, and shocked silences. As the Harrison contingent prepared to leave, thoroughly defeated, I called out one last time. Marcus. He turned, his makeup smeared from poorly concealed tears. Next family dinner, remember, success doesn't always wear Tom Ford. After they left, I stood at the window watching the city spread out below. Sarah appeared at my side with a coffee, her presence steady and reassuring. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. All these years of hiding your success? I thought about the decades of condescension, the dismissive comments, the patronizing offers of real jobs. Then I thought about the empire I'd built, the thousands of employees who relied on me, the positive changes I could now implement at Harrison Corp. It wasn't about revenge, I said finally. It was about proving that success comes in many forms, that you don't have to follow their path to build something meaningful. Over the next year, Harrison Corp transformed under Phoenix Consulting Group's leadership. I appointed competent executives based on merit rather than family connections. Marcus eventually found a mid-level position at another firm, hopefully having learned the value of humility. The family dynamics shifted too. At the next reunion, held in a much more modest venue, there was less bragging about job titles and more genuine conversation. Mother actually asked about my business with real interest, though she still occasionally flinched when someone mentioned Phoenix Consulting Group. Father, who had watched silently for years as his wife and son dismissed my choices, finally told me how proud he was, not of my financial success, but of how I'd handled it all. You built something real, he said, hugging me at the office one day. Something that matters beyond just money and power. He was right. Phoenix Consulting Group had become more than just a vehicle for proving my worth to my family. It was a force for change in the business world, promoting innovation and ethical leadership. In my office, I keep a small photo from that first reunion after the revelation. It shows the moment Marcus realized who I really was, not because I enjoy his discomfort, but as a reminder that true success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about building something meaningful, something that lasts. The nobody they dismissed for a decade had built an empire, but more importantly, she'd built it her way on her own terms. And that, more than any merger or acquisition, was the real victory. These days, when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the quietest voice in the room belongs to the most powerful person at the table. And sometimes the best response to those who underestimate you isn't to prove them wrong immediately. It's to build something so magnificent that when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late to matter. As for that little consulting business they used to mock, it just acquired its 100th company last week. But that's a story for another family reunion. Late one evening, as I sat in my office reviewing acquisition proposals, Marcus requested a meeting. When he walked in, he was different, humbled, but perhaps finally genuine. I never apologized, he said quietly, standing awkwardly in his off-the-rack suit. For all those years of mockery, condescension, degradation, I supplied, watching him wince at each word. Yes. All of it. He looked around my office, taking in the view he once thought he owned. You know what the worst part is? You were brilliant all along, and we were too blinded by our own arrogance to see it. I gestured for him to sit. The Marcus I knew would never admit that. He smiled sadly. The Marcus you knew needed to lose everything to learn anything. We talked for hours that night, really talked, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. He shared his struggles with living up to our father's expectations. I shared stories of building my company from scratch. As he was leaving, he turned back. That night at dinner, when I called you a nobody, you could have exposed everything right then. Why didn't you? I smiled, remembering that moment. Because success isn't about humiliating others, Marcus. It's about rising above what they think is possible. He nodded, understanding finally reaching his eyes. You didn't just build a better company, did you? You built a better way of doing business. And maybe, I added softly, a better way of being family. As I watched the city lights twinkle below, I thought about how far we'd all come. My family had learned that true worth isn't measured by the size of your office or the brand of your suit. And I had learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in the revenge you take, but in the wisdom you gain along the way. The empire I built wasn't just made of buildings and contracts. It was built on the belief that success should serve a greater purpose than just proving others wrong. In the end, that was the real legacy of Phoenix Consulting Group. Not just changing skylines but changing minds, one underestimated person at a time. And as for being a nobody? Well, sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. Just ask my brother, he knows that better than anyone now.